Welcome to Draft Sickos on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed. This is a show where we talk everybody from the biggest of names to the deepest of sleepers, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. I'm your host, Maxwell, and after a long wait, I'm finally back in the saddle with Stephen Gillespie. Stephen, how are you doing today?
Maxwell, I'm here to talk about all the things that we have missed in the 27 days that you and I have recorded a podcast together. Yes, I'm talking about Hawk Tour, all the people that have dropped out of presidential debates and things of that nature. So what else did we not talk about? You know, Drake and Kendrick. We got to talk
Drake
about
and
that.
Kendrick is a thing that happened.
Yeah,
there's been quite a bit going on. We've got a child removal going on in the background as my daughter tries to crash the pod.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's been a busy time. We've had summer league. We've had all sorts of stuff going on. So it's been a bit of an adventure. I'm going to relocate.
Yeah, easy day. But yeah, it has been a bit of an adventure. And, you know, Maxwell and I haven't recorded since about, June 24th was the last day that I had seen. And a lot of stuff has taken place since then and now. You know, obviously, we all covered the draft together. I was able to do a couple of interviews. Maxwell and I both had, Keith Smith on of the NBA front office show. I was able to interview Ben Golliver of the Washington Post. Maxwell brought Nathan back on the show. And since then, Summer League has kicked off. And believe it or not, we're actually not here to talk about the Summer League. Maxwell, as he has done for the past several seasons, you have done the No Stones Unturned piece, and it is well received and now heavily anticipated. And in order to kind of like fill this void that we have in our scheduling, Maxwell, you thought it would be fun to talk about the big man. And Maxwell, I just want to say, just in general, I'm excited about the big men depth that we have for this year's draft class coming up. You know, we always talk about how you go get a big, and then we see the big men that come in, and not everyone hits, but I am just looking at this year's draft class, Maxwell, and I just see so many big men that have a chance to make an impact in the league. Only so many are going to get drafted, but depending on who stays in or not, man, like Portsmouth is going to be a blast, and the undrafted free agency is going to be a haul as well, man. So how are you feeling about the overall depth of the big men in this year's class so far?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It just feels like there's a lot of interesting kind of like high-end talents. Like you've got your bigs at the top of the board that are interesting, but even further down, like you just look at some of the bigs that decided to go back this past year, some of the sleeper names that we're going to get to today. It just feels like the big man position is really starting to fill out in these draft classes. Like when I did my small guard article, like I just talked about the different hit rates on different positions. And the big man hit rate had been low for a while. And I think a lot of it was just like, there wasn't a lot of big man talent out there. Like it was a lot of guys that just honestly were not very good as far as the skill set that you need to succeed as a big man in the modern NBA. And it feels like now we're kind of coming back around on that a little bit. We've got these guys that have some defensive versatility, that have the offensive skill, that have like the ability to rim run and get up off the floor and things like that. Like it just feels so much better. But yeah, between like Malich this year, Colin Murray Boyles, he thrown as big. I'm a Derek Queen believer.
I have him top 8 right now.
I love it. I
love Derek Queen. I love him, dude.
Yeah. I'm really excited about these guys. So cannot wait to get a look at some of these big men.
So how is the we're obviously doing a little bit of like, hey, how's it going right now?
Yeah.
You're No Stones. Everyone loves these, right? Like I'm just as big of a fan of them as people outside the No Ceilings community are. And you and I, Draft Sickos, we talk about a lot of these dudes before, we ever do like pen to paper. What's the kind of like selection process been like for you this year? And then I know that you've already like begun to like talk to some of these players and coaches and things like that as well. How's that been going?
It's been good. I had tougher times with certain lists than others. In the past, the big man group has been a little bit difficult. Like, to be frank, this year I was the most excited I've been about a big man group for No Stones. So like in the past, generally there's been guys where it's like, you know what, I really like this guy. I really believe in this player. Like Amari Williams is a guy I always really liked. At the time, I like Drew Pember was really exciting. Jake Stevens was really exciting to me. And then last year it was like, these guys are good, but it was like kind of boring. Like it was like, like Joel Soriano is going to get looks. Like it was like that, you know what I mean? Where it's like this guy, he's fine, but like I'm not super interested in like what he could become. Like I just know what he is. He's a center sized player who does center stuff. Like for this year, I feel like there's a great mix of guys who have legitimate NBA potential and guys that are kind of interesting and a little bit different than what you normally see, or have some interesting quirks to their game, or some really strong outlier strengths. And that made it very fun to kind of scout and write. I am going to do a Morse Jones Unturned piece as well. And even like the sixth center who I'm going to write about for that was a guy that like I could have easily dropped into this list. Like I'm a big fan of some of the centers that are at mid-major colleges right now. 4 out of the 6 total that are going to be selected are at mid-major players. So 3 of the 5 in this column. And the 2 that were high major were mid-major and NAIA players last year.
Yeah.
So,
call-ups, baby. Yep.
Yeah. So I really like what is going on with the big man position at the moment.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I am super pumped. Myself, I am up to trying to do a little bit more like preseason scouting this year, especially with when my availability is this year. I've done like 63 like initial scouts on prospects and like already sifting through my boards. You and I were talking before this kicked off, man. There's some fun teams that I have like some future bets on some players. So listen, we love every draft class, and the 2024 was like beautiful in its own way. But holy smokes, dude, like this is going to be such a fun draft class to talk about. And we've also had some pretty cool news kick off. Rich, Mavs Draft is a part of No Ceilings as well. You and I have talked to him for years. He's been a great ally within the draft community. And now we get to talk shop with him on a regular basis, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm beyond excited. Like I'm just so excited for what this next year has in store too. Like this is going to be really, really fun. Janai Broom. Okay, let's talk. Do you want to sneak in some Janai Broom talk real quick?
Do I?
Okay.
So I've been a big fan.
You were very high on Janai Broom going into the year last year. I became high on Janai Broom as the year progressed, and I was just like, I don't think this guy like just for sure does not stink. Like if nothing else, this is a man who truly does not stink at basketball and is competent in so many areas. Are we ready to have the Janai Broom might sneak into the first round by the end of the cycle conversation?
Dude, listen, he's already top 40 for me, and I feel like I'm like I have to put like biases off to the side because like I can't. And I did this with Jalen Tyson this year. As a big Jalen guy. I kind of like overcorrected my bias like when I watched him coming into the year. And as we all know, he has slowly crept in. He's been one of the best performers in Summer League so far. And like, please no one tell me how to react to Summer League because I'm going to respond however I want. Jalen Tyson has been fantastic. And I feel like in a very similar way, Janai Broom at Auburn this year could do something very similar, right? Because he's very good at being a big man. Like, even though he's listed at 6'10", I feel like he's probably a little bit smaller. However, he is incredibly athletic, he moves like an NBA player. Like, he doesn't have like awkward strides, or like he doesn't look like he is struggling to move. Like some of these guys we're going to talk about today, they look like they hurt when they move. You know what I mean? Like Janai Broom looks like a fluid player. I am super excited. Not only that, but he can block shots. He can rebound. He's like
can shoot a little bit. Can pass while facing up. Like
the passing is underrated, and the shooting has improved. I'm interested to see how much volume that he gets from beyond the arc this year.
Yeah, and he's also a guy who doesn't turn 23 until after the next draft. So it's like he's a graduate, and it's like, but he's not like one of those guys that's like 25. Like this is not as much as I love Brandon Carlson, this is not a Brandon Carlson situation here.
We're Jacob Cruz for this upcoming draft class, right? Like he's going to be a little bit older,
Yeah. Some of these guys, they bounce around a little bit more. Maybe there's a red shirt in there. Maybe they were old coming out of high school. Like you never know. But with Janai Broom, like he's not ancient for sure.
I'm glad that we got to get some Broom conversation. This wasn't
He's
planned,
so
but
good,
that's why we
man.
love the No
We love the
Ceilings
Sickos
universe.
in the comments. So yeah, always feel free to join the party. So when we do this live, if you're one of these podcast listeners or after the fact YouTube watchers, we've got a live chat. So if you are listening, you have a question about a player or a comment on a player that you want us to respond to, or a guy that you just want us to touch on real quick, you can send those in and we'll touch on them during the show. So make sure you're joining us live as well.
And we have several hundred people right now, Maxwell, like tuning in on a random Sunday evening that we did not advertise until yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But for everybody that's watching, listen, hit us with some likes while you're in there. Those things really go a long way. But
they do.
Maxwell, let's talk some Stones, man.
Let's get into it. So the first guy that we're going to talk about today is going to be Miles Rubin, who is going into his sophomore year at Loyola. He is 6'10". Let's kind of follow the same sort of thing that I did with the article. So I'm just going to do his background real quick. So Rubin is a local kid, Chicago area kid. Played at Simeon, which is like where Derrick Rose, like Benji Wilson, Jabari Parker, like that's where the best players in Chicago that stay in Chicago play high school basketball. It's a very prestigious program.
NBA hotbed.
Yep, played EYBL for Mean Streets. Top 200 recruit. Didn't get a lot of huge offers. Which is kind of surprising as a top 200 big. Like I was at an Under Armour event this weekend and I heard so much if you can get a big, you gotta take a big. If you can get a big, and Miles Rubin, the offers, I mean, he had DePaul and Loyola, which are good. Yeah. But otherwise, it was just the Illinois directional schools, and that was it. Goes to Loyola. Loyola had a lot of veterans in the front court last year, and he ended up earning a starting spot. They were the 26th best defense in the country. He made the All-Atlantic 10 first team and the All-Atlantic 10 defensive team. And he's going back to Loyola for his sophomore year. So that's some context on him. And then let's talk about what we like about Miles Rubin. I'm going to lead it off with the defense. It's the defense. The defense is the thing with Miles Rubin. That is where he is going to give you most of his value. He played 17.8 minutes per game last year, and he blocked 2.3 shots per game. So he had a 14% block rate, which is better than what Walker Kessler did as a freshman, what Chet Holmgren did as a freshman, what Anthony Davis did as a freshman. I know he's playing in the Atlantic 10, but you watch him against Creighton, where he had multiple blocks that came on an island against Trey Alexander, who's a guy who's on a two-way and is extremely talented. It tells you a lot about what Miles Rubin is able to do defensively. Can really move. Just has really good awareness, is always paying attention. But when he does get pulled away from the basket, he just has that ability to eat up ground and fly off the floor, off 1 foot or two, and meet guys above the rim. Because he is so light on his feet, he's just a really nimble mover. If he does get dragged out on a ball screen and he has to switch, he can pop off the floor, block shots on the perimeter, but also just has the defensive chops and drop coverage, which is where you're going to want to play him because the rim protection is so good. To just anchor the defense and block shots. But because he's so light on his feet, I do think that he is a guy that can switch. I'm not I think I'm not as big on switching as a lot of other people in the draft space are, but I think he can do it. He's really nimble, uses feet and hips well. So I think he's got that modern stuff that you might want. That's icing on the cake. But the bottom line is this is a guy who can anchor a defense at a really, really high level. How did you feel about him defensively?
So defensively, man, I mean, I think that he's active on the glass. As I scroll down my notes here, I think that he moves his feet well, just like you, defensively. I think that he does a really good job of not fouling a ton, even though he's incredibly active on the defensive end. I think that he should be fairly switchable, or in parentheses what I write in my notes, or can play out in space, which is what I think the whole premise of the switchability, especially for the big man position, is. It's not that you want him switching out to, defend point guards on a 1-5 screen, right? But if he is, for whatever reason, switch, if he's guarding away from the action, gets over and help, you trust him to recover, slide his feet with whoever he ends up potentially getting picked on the perimeter. And then he has the defensive tools to make excellent, timely recovery moves and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. I think that he is really good at contesting shots and timing. Again, really good rebounder. The biggest thing that I have, and I don't know if we can kind of use this to segue into some of our concerns that we have for Miles, is that he looks like his listed weight of 210 pounds, which is really like gives you kind of like those John Henson vibes, right? I don't know if people remember him as a center or like a Brandon Wright. You know, these kind of like string bean big men that are long, agile, mobile, smart hands, good timing, things like that. But people aren't going to necessarily be afraid to play through his chest. And that's what's really going to help Miles a lot, in my opinion, is, and maybe this is kind of like, Loyola is like a very prestigious mid-major, right? Like it's not like a sleeper school or anything like that, but you kind of wonder if, you know, he goes to a school with more, you know,
where you're
resources,
playing like real
accessibility,
a lot.
Right. Kind of like that iron sharpening iron aspect, right? How is he going to be able to you know, get the most out of himself strength wise? And I think strength is going to be like the biggest thing for him. And that's kind of where I am like holistically on the defense, and we can transition to the offense later, but kind of defense is like, that's his niche, man. I think that that's what teams are going to be interested in. Like, okay, what can we do to unlock all of this? Now, even though he's a sophomore, he's going to be 20 come draft night, right? So he's going to be 20 years old, which is fine. I know that some people are very interested in stuff like that, but he's listed at 6'10". I think he plays like he's 6'10". I would be very interested, Maxwell, you might have this, like what his wingspan is.
I don't have that. I can look real quick and see if anybody else has it. Yeah, I'm not finding it too easily. I see like people saying like he's got a plus wingspan or whatever. I don't have an actual.
Yeah, we probably won't get those, right? But I think that he does have. If you look at the block numbers, like for people who are Bartorvik scouts, you know, that's a great like foot in the door on like what do you think that these players like great skills are going to be when they translate up. And I think that if you look at the rebounding, the shot blocking, things like that, his ability to play passing lanes, I think is another unheralded aspect of his game as well with his footwork. The wingspan has to be good. It's just we don't know what the specifics of that are.
I think that's a great point. I'm with you on the strength as well. Like that was the first thing I mentioned on my like what needs improvement section of the column is that he's 210 pounds. We're big physicality guys here. Now I will say in recent years, and this is something that we can talk a little bit about with the projection too, like there have been some of these skinnier centers that made it work. Like you can make it work as a skinny mobile center. And like some of the guys I compared him to, like if he fills out, he could get to like a Daniel Gafford point potentially, but like Nick Claxton is a guy who's on the skinnier side. A lot of these skinnier bigs that are mobile defensively are guys that shoot, which is like, if you want to be like, well, why isn't this guy like a top 10 pick? It's that he's not an offensive hub like a Chet Holmgren or a guy like Evan Mobley, who like Chet can really shoot and really pass, and like Mobley can really pass and will shoot a little bit. But even like a Derek Lively with like what he does as a passer. Like Miles Rubin is an okay passer. But right now that's where like, if you want to be more conservative, that's where you go more like Isaiah Jackson, Daniel Gafford, as far as like, what could it look like where it works. And it's like, if it works, it's like realistically, unless there's some sort of big offensive leap, it's probably that. I don't think he's going to be a shooter. He's like a 60% free throw shooter. So like, I just don't see the shot getting there. But he has like some flashes as a passer. So I think the hope is that like, that's the thing that gets over the top. The strength is an issue because like right now mid-major guys are getting through him. He grades out like okay as a rebounder, like by NBA center prospect standards, but it's like you're playing in the Atlantic 10. I would like you to grade out fantastic as an offensive rebounder. It's like an offensive and defensive rebounder, especially on offense, because it's like you're around the basket all the time. You're not a stretch big, so why are you having an okay offensive rebound percentage? So like I think so. So let's talk about the offense a little bit. He's really efficient. Super efficient as a play finisher, like 66.4% field goal percentage, like guy who can just sort of dunk everything, but like has some nice touch when it's not a dunk. Really good roll man, very quick getting to the rim. He likes to screen. Like he's not one of those guys where it's like, oh, is he going to be able to screen? No, like he does. Like he sets screens. So that's something. There's just not a lot to it. Like on a per 100 basis, he scored 19.9 points. So just like not a real threat on offense. Like, so that's like the area of his game that has to fill out. Like, defensively, I think even with the weight issues, you could probably like plop him on an NBA court, and there's some stuff he can offer on that end of the floor. It's just like on offense, how is he going to impact the game and like provide like even neutral value? Like, what is he going to do? Because it's not like he's Clint Capella, where he's like this monstrous lob threat who's going to set nasty screens and can really finish above the rim. Like, he just doesn't have that kind of power to him right now. So like he needs either the passing or strength to come along so that he can like really make it happen as a role man and be like a go-to guy that like players know, like, I can throw him the ball. He won't get bumped off his spot. He's going to finish through contact and I can reliably hit him every time. Or he can be a guy that like they can set up with short rolls and maybe he can do some stuff with his handle, or maybe he can hit a cutter or spray it out or whatever. Like, that has to come along. Like, he's not bad. Like this, he can finish. He's an okay passer.
It's just like, a simplistic skill set. Yeah.
Yeah. If he's going to latch on, there needs to be growth there. In terms of projection, I see NBA agility, NBA length, NBA motor, speed, attentiveness, bounce, defensive versatility, but like a guy who can really hold down the fort. The general overall production, like good BPM for a freshman, good block, like fantastic block rate for a freshman.
Yes.
Like, really great combination of like those two. Like, you just look at like the BPM and the block rate, and like those guys at least get a cup of coffee in the NBA. So like, I feel really comfortable being like, Miles Rubin's going to play in an NBA game at some point. The issue is just like, is he going to be like a good NBA player or just a guy who plays in the NBA?
And I know that we talked about Janai Broom earlier, but like before he transferred up to Auburn, like his calling card was that he was a great rebounder and shot blocker, right? And like, and he wasn't necessarily like the best build for an NBA big man, but that had been like a workup for several years. And now that's like all come to a culmination. Again, he's going to be 20 on draft night, right? But Miles Rubin is still just a sophomore, just 1 year of playing under his belt, right? And he's doing it from like getting up out of the mud where he doesn't get like all these resources dumped into him. But again, on the offensive glass, he looks good. I think that he makes very good cuts with the ball. I think that he does one thing that I noticed offensively was that he makes himself like unnecessarily blockable, like ball too low. Whenever
it doesn't keep traffic very well.
Yeah, it doesn't keep it high well. Does make himself unnecessarily blockable. I did write that he likes to slip screens a lot. That was something that I noticed. When you touched on the screens, I was like, I noticed that he slips them a lot. Has some decent touch around the rim, but I wouldn't say that it's like incredible, right? Not someone who I want to dribble a lot. He has some solid reads and makes them pretty quickly. So kind of like same as you, I do like the short roll decision making kind of long term. I think that he will profile as an athletic big, but I think defensively he looks far more athletic than he does offensively. And I wonder how much of that is like just the strength, right? And then I worry about how he'll scale up. There was one play against LaSalle where he was left all alone and he dribbled like up into 4 feet to the basket from the rim, and he couldn't hit like this open like runner floater move that he just like the LaSalle was like, we're just gonna like make all the passing lanes cut off and see what you can do. And he looked like he was not prepared for that at all. But again, I think that the defense is so good. I think that the runway ahead of him is so good. He's like the perfect Stone prospect. You know what I mean? Like he's got a clear-cut calling card to be someone great. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he does with like a full like D1 off season into training camp, hitting the weight rooms, being involved in the game plans and stuff like that, seeing what that looks like for him. Because I think that, Metcalf is another one of these guys that is very big on him within the No Ceilings family as well. So, and wrote about him. I'm looking forward to Miles, man. He's a just one of many great big man prospects in this year's class.
For sure. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back on the other side. So stick with us. That's the wrong transition button. I'm rusty. It's been 27 days. Give me a break. All right, there we go. So let's move on to Yaxel Lendeborg from UAB. Yaxel Lendeborg is a fascinating player. Born in Puerto Rico, grew up in New York, I believe. Tries out for the basketball team every year in middle school and keeps getting cut. As a freshman, finally makes the team, has some academic issues, is ineligible until his senior year. During the second part of the season, he plays 11 games. And he's like, yeah, basketball's like fine, whatever. His mom drags him to a showcase event. He doesn't have a scholarship offer. He's like, oh man, like there's all these players here. Like, I'm not looking forward to this. Sees his cousin and is like, I'm gonna like beat up on my cousin a little bit. One of the best players of the event. Gets a JUCO offer, goes to Arizona Western, and ends up
NBA
solid
like
year.
just hotbed.
Yeah, everyone's coming out of Arizona Western these days. Has a good freshman season, and then realizes like, oh man, like I can be somebody. Like I've been kind of not like wasting his potential, but you know what I mean? It's like this is a guy who like wasn't really headed anywhere. Like not just in basketball, but like in general, like was really struggling with his grades, like everything. And like basketball kind of gave him a purpose and realized like what he could become. Ends up by the time he's done there, leading NJCAA in rebounding, second team All-American JUCO player. Gets all these offers from like St. John, Xavier, Houston, but goes to UAB, loves Coach Andy Kennedy there. And then in his freshman season, his first season of D1 basketball, technically a senior and now going to be a grad, really gets it going during the second part of the year, ends up being first team All-American Conference, and he wins Defensive Player of the Year in the American Conference, American Tournament MVP, helps UAB get into the NCAA tournament, and now going back to UAB for his graduate campaign. So incredible journey to get here from like guy who just like can't really keep his head on straight to all of a sudden like I recognize that I have a massive opportunity and I am going to take every bit of advantage of it possible. Let's get into the skill set here. Do you want to go offense or defense with him first? What's more interesting to you about Lendeborg?
I think
he's really well-rounded.
I think that the offense is more interesting, but I kind of like the defense. Like start with the defense and then we'll get to the offense.
Yeah. So defensively, I think the projection is like I've got some questions about it, but the bottom line is he's good. Like that's the important thing. So he's 6'9", purported wingspan of 7'3", and weighs 240. So like one of those guys, like for a hybrid big, the size is good. Like maybe not what you would want out of like a full-time starting 5. Like he is not Chet Holmgren in terms of length. He is not one of these just enormous centers, but for like a hybrid 4-5, like the size is
kind of like B-ball Paul almost.
Exactly. Like TJD measurements or Anton Watson, like Brandon Clark. Like those are the guys that he's going to be similar. He's a bit thicker than Brandon Clark, but like those kind of
Jeff Green, Uncle Jeff.
Yeah. So 2.1 blocks per game, 7.2 block rate, and a good steal percentage as well. UAB plays a really aggressive defensive scheme. Yes. So in ball screen coverage right now, it's a lot of like blitz, hedge, showing. Like he is playing up and then running back. So the switchability, I think, is like pretty much there. I think that's probably going to be the scheme that he's most suited towards. But as a big, like if you want to drop him back, like he has the rim protection instincts. He is a good shot blocker, whether it's as the 5, as like that true anchor, the defense dropping back, or as it's a 4, as a lone man who's kind of rotating to help. He can do that as well. Really good rebounder, like really controls the glass, very high effort, always boxing out, always trying to get in on the ball, good nose for the ball, really focuses on the angles that the ball is going to come off the rim to time everything well. And when he has to guard in space, good athlete, good stance, not exceptional, but plays with a really high level of effort. So when he does get beat, like a lot of block shots from behind, because he is going to stay in the play. He is going to work, and he gets up really well off the floor really easily. So a guy who can like more than hold his own in space. What did you kind of make of the defense with Lendeborg? Because to me, he seems very kind of Swiss Army knife on that end.
He does, but then there's some of that Swiss Army knife stuff that I'm like, well, what does that really translate into? Yeah, because like I think that his height is going to be a big thing, right? So like, especially as he scales up, I think at college it'll be just fine, right? Like what we see him do UAB is kind of like what we've seen from some of these other guys, like a Jalen Slauson or a Isaiah Crawford, right? You're not the biggest, but you have such positive tools. You obviously have like the requisite amount of strength and length. You're going to be able to play in these kind of like switch heavy, versatile defensive schemes. And you want to get out in transition because, as we're going to talk about here soon, like your game is very well suited for a transition style, fast paced, way of business. But I worry about like when it slows down and you're in the grinder, like, is he going to be a 5? And that's like legit where my whole projection with him, I'm very interested in watching him this year because it's really who you defend as to what position you are. And it also depends like the team that you fall into, because he can be like a floor spacing 5 with a more back to the basket 4-man, things like that. It's going to be very interesting, but the strength allows him to hold up, I think, with bigs right now. But the length and the athleticism keeps him in there. Like I love his recovery ability. I love his ability in the passing lanes. I love his kind of like just like you mentioned it, you nailed UAB's rotation down to a T where it's hedge, show, stunt, recover back. And I think that his tools lend him appropriate into there. But I'm interested to see in some matchups where they go up against some like bigger conferences or maybe even just bigger players within their conference, like who do you latch onto and who is the guy that you're going to prevent from scoring the ball, because that's ultimately where I think like the NBA projections are going to come. I just think that Yax is going to be like a draft Twitter darling for all the reasons, like people are already excited about him. We already have people in the comments talking about him. I'm very intrigued. I really want to see like what he looks like in a more solidified role, but there's a lot of malleability.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, I think he's one of those guys that like in Anton Watson, who was drafted last year, like, because he just does so much stuff. Like, I don't know that he needs to have like a big scoring season, but the opportunity is going to be there with Eric Gaines out of it. Like, Eric Gaines was, a big part of their offense last year. Like, they still have enough talent coming back that it's not like, oh no, is he going to like drown having to be the only guy? But there is going to be an increased opportunity. Especially in terms of facilitation, which let's get into the offense. So
please, yes.
Again, the rebounding is really good. Like, that's boring, so we'll just kind of go through it quickly, but like really good offense.
We love rebounding around here.
It's important. It's really important. Like, this is the reason I put these things in the article.
Strength and rebounding.
Yes.
They matter.
Very fearless, gets to the line a lot, took 5.6 free throws per game last year, sky high free throw rate. Let's talk about the free throw shooting, though, because it makes the jump shot a little bit interesting. So in my shooting column, I wrote about how free throw percentage isn't everything for shooting projection, but for bigs who don't take a lot of shots, it is a great indicator. Yeah. Lendeborg shot 80% at the free throw line last year. He only took 1 3 per game, but he made 33% of them, and that thing looks good. That shot looks really nice. Mm-hmm. And he's getting more confident in it. He told me he wants to hit 53s this year. So last year,
you interviewed Yax, right?
Yes.
You got a chance to talk to him. Yep.
Yeah, really, I like his personality a lot. Like, seems like the kind of guy you'd want to have as a teammate for sure. Like, very self-aware, like, and very just kind of like wears his story on his sleeve. But really good attitude. The biggest thing I liked about him from the interview is every single aspect of his game. He would tell me which players he watches specifically to work on that element of his game. So it was like for rebounding, I watch this. For passing, I watch this. Like, it was very like, oh, like you're like in the lab. Like, you're very like, I'm obviously like works in the gym. Like, there's separate good intel I got on him on that front that I'm comfortable putting out there. We like the positive intel over here. Of course. But like the fact that that he's doing the film work too is really good.
Love that.
So the shot I'm bullish on. I do think there's like a real chance he is a floor spacer come this season. So we're looking at a guy who, based on what he's saying, would probably hope to take like 4 threes a game next year, which, like, if that happens, that's spectacular. And then we're dealing with a real like guy who could potentially play in 5-out lineups, or a guy that you could just play a lot more comfortably at the 4 at that point. Like, then he is just like a jumbo 4 who gives you everything you want out of a jumbo 4. So if the shot gets there, a lot of these other concerns just kind of slide right out of the picture for me as far as being a draftable prospect. Passing is good. Has some passes where it's like, oh man, don't do that. Like there was a lot of like, I got a rebound and I threw the outlet and like the guy is like not ready for that outlet pass. Like that was one of those things. And like, he's got to be a little bit more aware of off ball defenders when he is acting with the ball. So like if he is dribbling to attack, his handle is like fine for a bigger player, but just like be aware of where the dig is going to come from. Like be aware of like those kind of things. And like he had a couple passes where it's like, I need a little bit more zip on that. Still, despite that, 2.1 assists per game, positive assist to turnover, and a 13.4 assist rate, which is really good for a big man prospect. Like can facilitate from the top of the key, can be short rolled, can do
first year in D1, right? Like
that's yeah. So for the growth trajectory that he's on, really good stuff. And that's ultimately like what has me so interested in Yaxel ultimately is like, he is very close to being like a super valuable type of player to have, which is a guy who is 6'9" with long arms that could potentially play 5 out on both sides of the ball, or just be a really good jumbo 4 if the shot like really comes along. Rebounds his butt off, plays very hard, knows how to play basketball, despite like so often when we talk about these guys where it's like, oh, they didn't really play a whole lot. Like there's a massive chasm when it comes to their feel for the game. And that's not the case here. Like he has good feel, just instinctually a really sharp basketball player. And like his trajectory is a rocket ship. This guy scored 7 points per game at a JUCO 3 years ago, played 11 games in high school. Now he's an all conference guy in the American. Like, I don't know. I the more I think about him, the more excited I get. Like, I just think he's a real deal high level prospect that is going to be in my top 60 to start the year.
Yeah, I have him kind of in the latter portion of my top 60, but right now he's still there. Still have a lot of work to do for prospects I don't want to see to like comfortably rank, but he's in there, man. And again, noticeably strong. I talked about this a lot last year with, you want to know who Wesley Cardette is. You turn on the game and look on his team, and he's the guy that looks like an NBA player. Like you're probably going to hear me say that about Yaxel a lot this year, depending on the productivity. But I love that he can handle, right? So like if he's the 4 and the 5, you can do so much with an NBA scheme when you have a guy at the 4 and the 5 that you can trust to put the ball on the deck. He's just a wrecking ball in the paint, dude. Initiates a ton of contact. He is not running from anybody. If anything, he's running into them. He's kind of like Mike Allstock from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a way, where like he will go out of his way to put contact into somebody. And through that contact, he can finish with nice touch. I just worry about how that type of bully ball offense scales up, which is why the shooting is so important.
It's critical,
I'm glad that y'all were able to touch on that, right? And I wrote that he's capable of making the next pass. I don't know if he's going to be great as a hub, but again, we have 1 year of D1 basketball that we can watch, and he already put up good numbers. So, like, what's one more offseason going to do for him and his processing ability, right? Like, I'm excited to see that. And then, like, I think mistake-wise, like, you touched on some of the turnovers. I think some of it, too, is that he can, like, default into going into traffic, like where he will just look to get into somebody, even a double team, and then try to do stuff. And then that's where the turnover comes in. Very rarely did I see a turnover, though, where I was just like, who are you looking at? You know what I mean? Like, he's a very good processor. So I'm excited to see that. But again, like the critical thing, and I know that you always love this, like if he can shoot tag that you can attach on the players, that's going to be pivotal for Yaxel, like not only in college for one more year at UAB, right? But ultimately, like the NBA projections, that's where it's going to like become the most critical.
So next on the docket, we have Danny Wolf, who was at Yale, will be at Michigan next season. 7-footer, 250, big, strong dude. Local to me from Glencoe, Illinois. Played for Mac Irvin Fire, which was like an EYBL squad that is based around here. Was not like a star player on that team by any means. Like, kind of looked like a fish out of water in some senses, where it's like, man, this team's playing really fast, and like Danny Wolf is like not. He was a really good high school player in Massachusetts, got a wide range of offers from like your Chicago States and Albany's, but also like DePaul in Minnesota and a lot of Ivy League schools, because I believe he probably has very good grades and did well.
Big brain on Danny. Yeah.
I'm guessing based on a slew of Ivy League offers that he's probably a lot more intelligent than I am. Decides to
even
go to Yale.
Scaling down academically, like Michigan is far from like a poor man's academic university.
Oh, don't say that about Michigan. The Michigan people, they will get mad if you insinuate that they're anything but an Ivy League level institution.
They're very prestigious with academics. Sure. You know, that's what I'm getting at here. I'm sorry if I didn't sell it, Michigan fans. Excuse me. Go Wolverines.
He plays 153 minutes as a freshman at Yale. So it's like, nice. This is a guy that's on the basketball team at Yale. Plays for Israel during the FIBA U20 Euros.
Yep.
Scores 17.7 points per game and grabs 12 boards while they win a silver medal. Huh?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, where did that come from? Well, that's just who Danny Wolf is now. He starts for Yale. He is an all Ivy League first team selection, leads him to the second round of the NCAA tournament. The sell here, we got to start with the offense with Danny Wolf. I think you might even be higher on Danny Wolf than I am.
I have him top 50 right now.
Whoa. Okay.
Sorry. If you're saying whoa, like it just thundered really loudly where I am right now. So.
Sorry.
Dangerous thunderstorms.
I like Danny Wolf. I'm going to let you take the lead on the offense. I'm going to do another room change over here real quick. But give people the rundown on the Danny Wolf offense, because it's special. Like I don't like to throw that word around a lot, but like not a lot of 7-footers that do what he does.
I'm sad that I'm not going to get to see Maxwell's facial expressions as I go through these, but I'm going to do my best here, folks. So of all the players that we have and we'll talk about on today's show, Danny Wolf is my favorite. I have him top 50. For one, he's listed at 7 foot, 255 pounds. So like NBA size big man right off the rip. He's a junior, but will be 21 on draft night. So I think that the age for his class is not all that bad. What stands out to me is like the nice passing feel and vision that he has, you know, with Yale and your Princetons and your Harvards and all these like Ivy League schools, very European style approach where everybody has to be able to contribute as a passer and a playmaker on offense. And I think that's what makes Danny so special offensively. It's not just that he's huge and has shooting touch, but I really trust him to be an offensive hub, particularly at the college level where players can run off of him, kind of Quentin Post-esque, if you will. I think that that's going to be a pretty popular comparison where the passing and the vision are there. The shooting is there. Not bad at putting the ball on the deck for a couple of dribbles while going to the basket. I think that that's there. Pretty good rebounder. I think that he moves particularly well, even against higher levels of competition that we saw Yale play against. He did look good against higher levels of competition and higher caliber opponents. I think most of his turnovers have been due to him being the hub, and that won't necessarily be his role. So when I see these turnovers, I'm like, I like the process of him doing them because he is experimenting with being like a more higher usage player. Going to Michigan, I think, you know, playing with Roddy Gale, players like that, I think that he's going to be able to pass a little bit more. And I think that they're going to lean into that. I think that he can oftentimes settle into being too much of a floor spacer. But again, I wonder if that's like the university that he played for last year. And maybe Michigan does like to get him a little bit more back to the basket. But I felt like he settled a lot. I wish that he played a little bit more mean or a little bit more tough. And I think that offensively, the athleticism isn't great, but it's also not bad. I think he's kind of like in that weird, like intermediate stage. Again, Quentin Post, I think, is going to be a pretty popular comparison for especially since Post just got drafted. We're going to be interested to see what he looks like in the NBA. I think the success that you can see a player like Danny Wolf or like Luka Garza still hanging on in the NBA. There's going to be like these big men, you know, that would he look good in Boston, that type of thing, right? I think that Danny has a lot of good offensive skill sets, and that is what I'm excited to see the most.
Yeah, so Wolf, really, really shined on offense this year. Like they're just not a lot of bigs who during their freshman or sophomore year, like have a usage rate over 25 for one. Like that in and of itself is not normal. 15.2 assist rate is stellar for a big man. And then like the 3-point percentage, 34.5% on 2.6 per game. It doesn't like jump off the page. But again, like I always talk about like with bigs, like you've got to look at the number and contextualize it with like what other bigs were like when they were that age. That is a really high volume and a really high percentage for somebody who is 7 foot tall at that age. That is the thing he can hang his hat on. And like the shot prep footwork is really pretty. Like I know that like Jake Stevens is like a fringe NBA player, but it's still like it reminds me of him, and that it's like good screen, strong body, and then like, oh wait, that shot prep footwork was like not what I was expecting from a guy who looks like that. Like really, really clean. A couple other guys I thought about with him, since we're on the topic of comps, like Quint Post is one. Like, could he be like slow, not one? And then the other two I was thinking about with him are like Mike Muscala and Frank Kaminsky, where Muscala was like a defender in college. But like Kaminsky like was bouncy, but like not a great rim protector, and like had short arms. Where like with Wolf, it's like, well, he's really big at least, but like the offensive profile is like pretty similar, where it's like this is just skilled large dude. Who is from the greater Chicagoland area as well in Kaminsky's case. But yeah, I love the offensive skill set. Let's talk about the defense.
Okay.
I am really worried about it. So the one thing is like he's super strong. Like he controls the glass, like almost a 30% defensive rebound rate, which like that's the thing like we were talking about. Those other two, like that's what you want to see when a guy is playing at like a lower level of college basketball. When he throws his chest on guys on the perimeter, he can kind of swallow them up a little bit because he's really strong. I don't know what he does in ball screens right now, because like he doesn't get off the floor very well. So like even drop is like pretty tough, just because like he's not going to get up to turn guys away at the rim. He's too slow to switch. Like he's got to figure out a way to get good at drop coverage is like ultimately what it comes down to. He has to maximize his athleticism for one. And then from there, like he's just got to, like really, really make sure he is on top of his stuff as much as possible. He had like a little bit more lapses than you might expect on that end, just in terms of like awareness of what's going on the court. And I think it shows up a little bit with him just because like their recovery tools are not there the way that they are with those others too, that it's like, once he gets beat, it's just kind of over like that. He's not getting back in the play. So he's got to be really, really sharp on it.
Yeah. I think you hit a lot of the notes that I had, man. Like, I think that he plays off of shooting matchups, like really far out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an indication of bad foot speed. I think his hands are good on defense. And if we talk about things that translate not only to the NBA, right? It's steal numbers, it's block numbers, and it's rebounding. So like, while the defense is kind of not all there, I think that some of the things that he needs to be good at as a big man, they are there, right? Like I think that he boxes out well, he closes out the play. And when he does have position, I think that he's a really difficult guy to shoot on. But again, the assignments will kind of similar to what we talked about with Miles Rubin, which is weird because he's listed at 255, is like players weren't necessarily afraid to like go up into his chest. I don't like how he looked in their game against Auburn against Janai Broom. Like Janai just like ate this poor guy up. I worry about his nimbleness on defense, and you spoke to that too on the screens. And then the recovery speed. I wrote recovery speed could be a real problem. Like that's in my notes, right? So, but again, I wonder like how much of it is like, you know, Yale, are they putting in a lot of money into their gym and their like strength and conditioning, stuff like that? They're probably big brains or thinking of ways that they could get better without investments. Like, I don't know, but I wonder like with the jump to Michigan, how much more rocked up does this guy look? You know what I mean? Does he get better strength? Does he add more athleticism, especially to like that lower body? I'm wondering, you can only do so much in a couple months, right, Maxwell? But still, you
it's
wonder
gonna be
like
interesting
what
though.
improvements could be there, you know?
Yeah, and I know that there is talk, and you never know. Like a couple years ago, Matt Painter was like, "We're gonna play Trevion Williams and Zach Edey together all the time," and like that wasn't what happened. But like, so he's going to Michigan. They have so Dusty May is going to be the coach there, who is at Florida Atlantic.
Yep.
Vladislav Golden is coming with them. Vlad is also like Vlad's like 7'1". Vlad's huge.
He's huge. Yeah.
Dusty May is saying right now that he's going to play the two of them together. I think in the Big Ten, there are going to be matchups where you can do that. Like if Purdue is playing like Jacobson and Trey Kaufman-Renn, you could play those two against them. Like if Indiana is playing like Malik Renault and Umar Ballo, you might be able to play them together. Like there's going to be nights where you can do it, and there's going to be nights where it's probably completely untenable. Vlad is really good, and I worry that because Dusty May has coached him for a long time, that's going to be his security blanket. And then when things aren't going well, and I say I worry for like this NBA prospect in 2025, Danny Wolf, where it's like, if things don't go well, it's just gonna be like, well, we're just gonna roll with Vlad because like he's a traditional center who's 7'1" and is really good.
More comfortable with him.
Yeah. So like I'm viewing Danny Wolf more as like a 26 guy, where it's like this year I wouldn't sweat a hiccup this year with Danny Wolf. Like I think he's still worth considering as an NBA guy, even if this year goes a little rough. Like if it's an outright disaster, maybe not. But like I think if he takes his lumps this year, like it's not the end of the world. This is gonna be his first time major season. It's gonna be a weird fit, and then like next year is like what I'm really eyeing.
And I think that's fair. That's why I kind of have him where I do on my board. I have like late second. I think that the bottom drops out completely. Like no sweat. I missed out on a preseason. Sure. I missed out on preseason second rounder, you know, but I think that I think that the offense though is that good to where you really do have to consider, like, let's say Dusty May does kind of find some good high-low action, you know, and that leans into the 3-point shooting of Danny Wolf. I think that there could be some stuff there, but I am like you, I am a little bit worried, particularly with the decision to go to Michigan, a great prestigious academic university, right? But I'm wondering how the playing time and role will work out. And again, he's junior. He's got another couple seasons that he could be playing there long term. I like the offense that much to where I think that it could be that good this season.
Yeah, it's for sure on the table. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to go a little bit quicker on the last two guys who were just very interesting in two completely different ways. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, so we are going to start off with Juslin Bodo, who is a 7-footer out of High Point. Bodo had a fascinating background. It was like one of my favorite interviews I've done from one of these. I've gotten some fun interviews for this year, man. Like I'm having a blast talking to these.
It's a great collection of names, dude.
So when I talk to Bodo, the first thing I always ask guys is like, what got you into basketball growing up? And he's just like immediately like, well, I didn't play basketball growing up. Like he was immediately just like, I didn't really play. Yeah. So he's from Cameroon and he's a soccer player. And he was like, one day I was at soccer practice because like we don't play basketball, we play soccer. And a guy came up to me, he's like, you're too tall to be doing this. Like you gotta play basketball. So he's like 15, 16, and he's just like, all right, well, I'm gonna play basketball. Gets good at it real quick. And then like all of a sudden it's like you're off to the US. It's SoCal Academy, which is again like legitimate. Like we joke about these places being NBA hotbeds, legit NBA hotbeds.
They are.
Like, this is where AJ Johnson, who was just a first-round pick, Garway Dual was on his high school team. Like he is thrown into the fire, and he was like totally overwhelmed by like the speed of the game. Like he was like playing in Cameroon. Like the game was not this fast. Like just a lot was going on all the time. And it was tough for him. And like he was saying that everyone would like make fun of him because he was the only guy on the team that didn't have offers. So like everyone would be like anything would happen, they'd be like, oh, how many offers do you have? And he would be like, oh, well, I don't have any. So he was like, I wanted to work as hard as I could to start getting offers. And they started to come. Like he wasn't a star on his high school team, but he was really effective. And like, I think it was like 8 points, 8 rebounds, something like that, where it was like garbage man duty. Gets offers from IUPUI, East Tennessee State, New Mexico State, East Carolina, Montana, and High Point, who had an assistant that had been on the staff with him while he was at SoCal Academy. So it worked out great. He knew that if he was having like a harder time with like processing or understanding something, like he had a guy who was going to help him out.
Yep.
Bodo really gets it going during like the second part of the year as a freshman. Now keep in mind, like this guy's like this is his third year of organized basketball.
Insane.
Big South Defensive Player of the Year in his third year of organized basketball. They didn't make the NCAA tournament, but they played in the CBI against like good mid-major teams. Like this isn't,
Sure.
you know, the cream of the crop, but like they played good teams that had winning records at the mid-major level. In those 3 games, 15.3 points per game, 13.7 rebounds per game, 3.3 blocks per game. Just really got it going down the stretch. The big thing here, so I in the No Stone articles, I added a thing where it's like reminds me a little bit of, and like 3 names. And these guys aren't like, I'm not saying like he's going to be these guys. And I try to give like this is an optimistic outcome. This is like a more recent prospect. So if you're newer to the draft space, like it's a name you recognize. And then like just like it's kind of give you an idea of some outcomes. Mark Williams, Moses Brown, and Adem Bona were the guys that came to mind for me, where it's like this is a guy who is a legit 7-footer, 240, and like can move, like and plays hard
as heck.
Plays hard all the time. He kind of knew, because like he is raw, that like if I'm gonna score, it's gonna be from rebounding. And like he was like in practice, like if I didn't rebound, we had to run, and like I didn't want to be that guy, so I was rebounding like because I had to do it. So he had a defensive rebound rate of 25.3, which is good, but a 19.9 offensive rebound rate, which is like Jared Vanderbilt level. But like think it like, but again, like I'm not saying he's going to be better than Jared Vanderbilt, but part of the reason that Jared Vanderbilt like can be out of the rotation sometimes is that he's not 7 feet tall. Like he's not a center size player like Bodo is. And like, if you want to be optimistic about him, that's a big reason for it. Defensively, really good. Third highest block rate in the nation among freshmen at 7.9. Shot blocking, he said, is like the thing that came most naturally to him playing basketball. It's something they work on a lot. Like they work on like different like things where like you're reading the defense, ground coverage scenarios, like things like that. And he's like, that helped him. Like he said, like it's something that came naturally, but like he's very good at just like pattern recognition. Like that's something that he kind of prides himself on. So he's like, when we go through these scenarios in practice, like it's very easy for me to pick up on them when they happen at game speed. So like that's really good. But he's not like I'm really impressed just by like his fundamentals defensively too. Like his hand placement is really good. He does a really good job like when he does show at the level, or like even when he's like playing in like a more shallow drop coverage, of like using his hands and his hand placement to sort of stifle the penetration of the guard, keep him out of the paint, you know, and kind of maintain where the roller is. Like really sort of polished, like a lot more polished than you would expect in those instances. And super light on his feet. Like, again, like you want Bodo around the basket, but like when you put him in space, like he's going to be fine. Because he played soccer, he mentioned that's why he thinks his footwork is as good as it is when he is in a stance. Like he's really comfortable moving around and moving his feet quickly. But defensively, I see a guy who has like NBA size, athleticism, and honestly, like the fundamentals, which for a guy who's been playing just really thrown into the deep end of college basketball and high level prep ball, like really impressive. So I love the defense with him. How do you kind of feel about it?
The same, dude. I mean, in my notes, that great rebounder, gets physical to create separation in the paint, loves the post spin. I love that he does the post spin the way that he does. And again, when you told me like the level of experience that he has, that's a very polished move for the young man there. Nice touch in the paint, great hands, like catches a lot of difficult high passes, like comes down with the ball at a good clip. Great motor is what I have in my notes. And that's when you mention like possible outcomes and you mention Adem Bona, I see that specifically because of the motor, like plays with his hair on fire. Great above the rim finisher, not afraid of contact. Not only does he have great motor, But like if you watch how he responds to things in the game, I love his energy. Yeah, like he's very competitive and like very communicative on the floor as well. I think that he needs work on defending in space. I think that he plays pretty low, which I think points to that soccer style defense that you mentioned. Just getting that low for him, I'm sure that was something that he had to kind of like beat himself to do, and now he's got to work his way back into presenting himself tall, especially like in these recoveries or like isolations to the basket. Smart hands, but I think that he needs to play a little bit more mean when defending the post as well, which again, I think that's going to be confidence and more repetitions. And I think that high character player, I think, and I think that shows itself to him sticking with High Point, because I'm sure that there were no shortage of schools that he could have gone to if he would have decided to transfer up. But I think what we see a lot with these like international dudes is that they are loyal to a program like that is willing to believe and invest in them. And especially for a player like him, you kind of had to like drag away from like his sport of preference to like learn this whole new skill set. I'm sure that played a factor into him wanting to stay with High Point.
Yeah, and so this is not based on conversations I had with anybody on the High Point staff, but more so people from the outside. The word is that High Point's NIL situation is like quite good for a mid-major. So like I would expect High Point to be one of those like higher end mid-majors in coming years as well. But yeah, like a guy who easily could have transferred up. And I think he made a great decision just from like an exploring the studio space standpoint. Like I think a lot of these guys like have a good year and then kind of rush up to the next level. And I think for a guy like Bodo, the issues that he has are with offensive polish. Sure. And I think you are so much better off like figuring that out against a lower level of competition first. And like the Big South isn't terrible. Like it's not like he's playing in like, I'm not going to name names. There are worse conferences in college basketball.
There's lots of good basketball everywhere.
Yeah. But like, it's not like he's playing in like a garbage league. The offense is like the Adembona like comp is like why I like went with it, is like because of how Adembona looked on offense as a freshman. Like he can screen, he is fast, he can control he can offensive rebound, and he can dunk the crap out of the ball. He had 41 dunks. So like really good rim runner, really good like out in transition, great cleanup man. That's kind of it. Like he had a really low usage rate. He had a ghastly assist rate. Like he had 7 total assists on the year, which I think like Kofi Coburn did that a couple years ago. Kofi Coburn had like 5 assists one year at Illinois. Like in his case, Kofi, it's not. Kofi had the ball a lot. So this was more a result of like, he just doesn't get the ball very much in a position to utilize ball skills because like they're not quite there. Where with Kofi, it was just like, I'm shooting.
I'm doing this.
Kind of goes to me.
I am huge.
So he gets sped up with the ball sometimes. Like he does, like you mentioned, like he's got like that spin, which is like really nice. But when certain things get taken away from him, he can travel. Can force some shots. Like doesn't quite have the same feel on offense that he does on defense. Like that.
Not a lot of counters.
No. That's like the one area of his game. Like if you just watch him on defense, you could believe that he played his whole life. Not on offense is like where you kind of see it.
Exactly.
Really rough at the free throw line last year. He was at 39.8%, which is like horrific.
That's ghastly.
So the one thing he said is that he is very confident that he is going to shoot free throws better this year. The number he told me is 75%. He is like, I was always really bad at it. It wasn't a focus for me. It is something that he is working very hard on. And he said that he's even taking threes in some scrimmage games in practice. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to come out and be a floor spacer, but I think the hope is that this year he gets to like 60% at the free throw.
Improved touch,
that he can just like not be a hack-a-shack target. That's what you're looking for. If he can not be a hack-a-shack target and be a little bit more comfortable making passes, then like the trajectory is good. Because again, we're talking about a guy who was a freshman last year. Like this is a long-term projection. I am not saying that Juslin is going to be an NBA guy a year from now. I think the idea is like, wow, what a productive and interesting freshman with a unique backstory. This is a guy who could maybe get there. And that's kind of where I settled with him.
I think that's a totally fair assessment. A guy that you put me onto, and again, like that's what kind of inspired me to go like on these like very, very smaller like mid-major programs and start looking at names. And when you put me on him, dude, like I think that there's a legit NBA trajectory for him long term because
Yes,
of
yeah.
how like in the instinct shows up on the defense. And that's where I think like you can tell a lot about a player by how they defend, right? And you can see that. So I don't want to bet against Bodo for becoming an improved free throw shooter because this dude, he's like the type of dude that if he's got his mindset to something, he's pretty much going to do it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a big thing for him. And like, yeah, he's just like one of those guys who are coming in. I'm like, wow, like a guy with NBA size and a really high motor, that's like worth looking at. And then like I talked to him and I was just like, whoa, okay. Like there's a lot more to this story than I realized. And that makes me a little bit more like willing to be imaginative about like where this could go in the coming years. So a name for the future. Like if you don't catch every High Point game this year, I wouldn't like totally sweat it, but like a guy that like if you are deep in the weeds, like start getting some games in here and there.
For sure.
Last guy we're gonna hit, Elijah Malone from Colorado.
I love Elijah Malone.
Elijah Malone is fascinating. It's like the guy I'm least confident in projecting because like we'll get to it, but what a game. So Elijah Malone plays at Prairie Heights, which there was somebody I talked to like a decent amount on Draft Twitter that messaged me. That's like a high school of like 400 total students. And it was like someone that I've like talked ball with before. It was like, oh yeah, I went there. My uncle coached him. And I was like, what? Like, what are the odds? Small.
I love them even more, dude. Like I went to a school that's like 300 between kindergarten to high school. So like very, very, very small. And
positive report said that he is a really good kid. So
you love
to hear that. Love to hear that. So he plays at Prairie Heights High School, the prestigious Prairie Heights High School in LaGrange, Indiana.
Of course, everyone knows this.
He then goes to Grace College, which is an NAIA in Indiana.
Coolest logo in college sports, I feel like. I love the Grace logo.
Yes, yeah. Big time stuff from Grace College in their sports logo. While
Lancers,
he's there, it's just so wild. Like it's like not flashy. It's I don't know. Like I get really mad when I see like smaller programs that have a logo that's too similar to another school, and it's like they could have just copied the Georgia G.
Yeah, but Grambling, right? Like Grambling has the Georgia G.
Yeah. Like they could have just like taken another school's logo, but they put some spin on it and they made something really cool. I like it too. So he goes to Grace. He is like perfectly fine as a freshman. He's a reserve. He scores 9.6 points per game. And then each year he starts getting better and better. And he went to the Fab Four, which is the NAIA's version of the Final Four for copyright purposes. He won NAIA Player of the Year, an award that Riley Minix won last year. And he turned himself into a legitimate NBA prospect. Enters the transfer portal, gets interest from Boise State, Notre Dame, and Indiana, but ultimately goes to Colorado. The first thing I want to talk about with Elijah Malone is his body.
Please, yes. That's in my notes. In my notes, I wrote thick boy on
I was like, what is this? The first time I saw him, like, so the first time I came across Elijah Malone was like a photo of him that was taken at like a press conference that I saw on Twitter. And they were like, 6'10" big man Elijah Malone. And I was like, that man is a defensive tackle. That man is not.
He's listed at 280.
Yeah. 280. 6'10", 280. He is so wide. Like 280 might be low. And I don't say that in a way of like, he's got to lose weight. Like I mean that in like, he's like legitimately just built like a defensive tackle.
I think that's what Joel Embiid is listed as. And Joel's got like 3 or 4 inches on him.
Yeah, that are like 6'10", that are like also listed that in the NBA. It's like he's wider than them. Like he's not like chubby, you know what I mean? So it's not like he's got extra weight. Like
he's got like that David Roddy build, right? Like those dudes that you see play in this conference. Like this is the conference of unique bodies. I love the fact that he went to Colorado.
Yeah, so he's got this huge frame. And he shoots threes. Like he's 36.9% from 3. But also like the first game I watched, I was just like, I'm just gonna watch like whatever the last game they had on Synergy. Because like when I'm doing like my like who am I gonna cover for the series work, And there's a play where like he does like a pump fake on the 3-point line and like
Yep.
gets low and shows like real bend and then just explodes off one for a dunk.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, I'm
in.
very intrigued. I'm very intrigued. NAI Player of the Year, which we just saw be a thing with Riley Minix, enormous man with like some bend and some bounce. So 17.3 points per game, 8.3 boards, 1.9 assists, 63% from the field. So like he's got like your normal like interior post game like role man, like that stuff is there. What makes him interesting is that he is a 37% 3-point shooter on good volume and 82% roughly at the free throw line. But yeah, like could be potentially a dribble pass shoot big man with a really unique build. And like, I don't worry about him having NBA strength, which like usually like when I look at these transfer ups, I'm just like, for what reason physically will this guy not pan out? And with Elijah Malone, there might be some other stuff. It's not going to be the strength. Nope. So let's talk about your impressions of Elijah Malone physically and the offense, then we'll get to the defense.
Yeah, so like 6'10", 280, I believe he's going to be 23 on draft night. So like there's a little bit of reasons that he'll probably won't be high up on draft boards. But again, like I love his offense, man. Like capable of putting the ball on the deck. You just touched on that in that one play. Willing to shoot. The shot does take a while to get off. So like he can convert. I'm wondering what the volume is going to look like, especially like transferring up to Colorado, right? Mm-hmm. Has a very good passing feel. I love his vision too. So I think that he's going to be able to be one of these big men that you can run the offense through a little bit. Not that you want him initiating, but you trust him to make the next right read. Uses his body well, I think, too, for like being an under basket guy. He uses his body well to like keep the defender away from the rim, uses his great length to finish in the paint. Obviously not afraid of contact. I think that he is preferably under the basket, but if he's given enough runway, he can actually like get up and like finish well, right? Good hands. I think that he catches the ball at a very good clip. Post moves with either hand, fine with contact, pretty strong. And I think that he's more nimble than he appears. I can't help but wonder, like, what is the conditioning going to look like at the next level?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And like, offensively, I love how unique he is. And then we get into the defense, I think there's some good defensive stuff there, but that's where I think the conditioning is going to kind of show up a little bit more, because on offense, great Eddie Lampkin replacement, right? Like, he's like a very like capable successor, I feel like, in that role, but a little bit more modernized. I think the offense is fun, but when we start talking about the defense, that's where I have a little bit more concerns, particularly with like the conditioning and footwork and things like that.
Yes. Yeah. So there's some good stuff. Like I think his balance is good.
Yeah. I think it's fine, right? Like the initial jump, like he's probably going to do most of his work to get a rebound to like carve space out, right? But he's not going to like come out of nowhere to grab a rebound.
Yeah, and he was like defensively dominant, like at the NAI level. Like he blocked a lot of shots. He blocked 2.5 shots per game. He also played like 25 minutes per game, and it wasn't foul trouble. It was because I think he has gas tank problems. He, like cardio, like wise, just has to get there. Like I do think he plays at Colorado this year. Like the reason I listed him 5th in the column is like I generally do it in order of just like how interested am I in these guys. Like
sure.
I'm super interested in Elijah Malone, but I'm very uncertain projecting him just because it's like you played it in an AIA school. My track record of like I don't have a lot of data on NAIA transfer ups, and like it's tricky. But like a lot of his blocks were a result of like throwing his body on a 6'2" kid who can't really jump and then swallowing them up and just like batting their ball out of the air without jumping a whole lot. I was also like some frustrating moments too, where like he would do the thing that Zach Edey did sometimes, where it's like Zach Edey is like in position and drop coverage, but like his hands are kind of low and he doesn't really go
down.
For a and with Zach Edey, it's like, well, Zach Edey has like a really high usage rate and like they can't afford for him to get in foul trouble. With Elijah Malone, it's like, dude, you're playing 25 minutes a game. Like you don't get in foul trouble. Like you can go get that ball. Like there is no reason. Like you're getting a breather in 2 minutes, dude. Like go for it. Like put your hand up. So like that kind of stuff I was a little frustrated with. Yeah, I think where his like defensive habits and like functional athleticism and like leaping ability and stamina go are what's going to dictate things. Like I threw the lazy like Kenneth Lofton comp in there. Like I think there's some Jonas Valanciunas here. I hate like throwing Naz Reid out there again, but like it's a dribble, pass, shoot, big, and there's like one of them that's really good. So it's that's the one that gets mentioned. But like I'm really interested in him. I hope it pans out because he's so fun to watch. Like he's mesmerizing. I don't have enough like of a data sample to be like, bam, that's the guy. Like I like with Dalton Connect last year, I was like, he's gonna get drafted. I can't do that with Elijah Malone. I wish I could because he's awesome. He's really fun, but I don't know.
I think he's unique enough in such a way. And like we mentioned David Roddy and Kenneth Lofton, like those dudes got cups of coffee, in the NBA and like have had pretty decent success with that body type. And sometimes like the outliers are the ones that make it up. Like the ones that don't look like everybody else are the ones that find pathways to success. And that's why I'm not out on him. And I think too, that like he's got that unique combination of like strength, size, and skill that it's like, you kind of trust him to do a lot of things, but I'm just like super interested to see like what the work rate is, like what the reports are coming out on his work ethic, what he's like in the off season, what he's like in the regular season, how much playing times he gets. Is he going to be in like a big man rotation, or is he going to hold down the position? And then how much of the offense is going to go through him too, because like Colorado, they're in a unique spot to where they're losing so many like high caliber players this year. And now they're looking to kind of like retool a little bit. Them going the route of like a utility big man, I think is going to be, that's not what we're used to seeing from them. Right. So I think it's going to be interesting to see like what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of opportunity and openings there. There's another transfer up from a lower level too that I think is worth mentioning that we're going to talk about as we continue this series later on. But yeah, Colorado is going to be a fascinating team to watch. So really excited to see them. They've got a game against BYU on January. That's his conference schedule. So
they have some recruits this year too. BYU does. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So like that's like a conference matchup that'll be really interesting. It'll be fun to see. I mean, it's like Baylor, Kansas. Like, what does he look like against a Hunter Dickinson? What does he look like against a pesky guard team like Iowa State? That's going to make him do a lot of stuff. Like, if he's good, there's going to be a lot of tests that could be interesting later on in the year. So yeah, that's it for the this year's No Sun Unturned big man class. Steven, what have anything you've been working on? Any projects or anything coming soon?
I don't know, man. I'm thinking about like maybe making my preseason like scouting reports available, like maybe to like the No Ceiling Plus people. I gotta talk. This is more just thinking out loud, but nothing in particular, man. Just really enjoying the time off lately with like watching film at my own pace, not feeling like I gotta like do things by certain times and stuff like that. So that's been fun. I've been watching a lot of movies, been swimming a lot, been
nice.
Some big family stuff going on, but nothing crazy to plug, man. Just I'm excited that we got to talk ball for the first time in about a month, man. How about you? I know that you're still grinding away.
Yeah, still working on it. So we'll have another No Stone out there soon. I'm gonna do a recap at the Under Armour event I was at this weekend. 17U finals were in Chicago, so got to do that. Got some great insights. Got to see some really cool players. Sean Abev, keep an eye out for him. He's
pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah,
I like him a lot. 6'7", 6'8" dude who can dribble fast and shoot and move and has good feel. Like those are NBA guys a lot of the time. So he really impressed me. He was like the one guy coming out the event that I'm like, ooh, I see NBA stuff there. But yeah, I'm gonna write up that event. So we'll get that in the works. And then next No Sun Unturned group should be out the week after this. So it's starting the wings. We got 3 wing groups, then the guards, and then the more stones. So I already got 3 interviews in the books for this one. So working on one for another. I think the other school's blowing me off. I'm gonna keep it a buck. I think I'm getting blown off by
do we drop the name here? Put some pressure on some people?
Yeah. Everybody start harassing. No,
line up outside the university.
Yeah.
We have some sickos that would do it for us. We know that.
For sure. But working on that.
So what's the next group that you're dropping?
So do you want spoilers? Should we spoil it?
Let's spoil
do
at
it.
least the group. The
Yeah,
group
let's
and the
do the
day.
group.
Just the next one. Yeah.
So we'll do the next group here. I've like rearranged the schedule like 5 times because I'm keeping like, no, these 2 players are too similar. I'm going to put them into different groups. So we're going to do the Wings part 1 next week. So to lead off, I'm gonna put this one out there. Every year I pick one guy that I'm like, I like this guy a lot. He's still under the radar. We're doing him again. Last year was Amari Williams, who like I could have done him a 3rd time. I still love Amari Williams. He's going to Kentucky.
I love Amari. Another big man.
Yeah,
Another
no.
big man.
So for the wing I'm doing this year again is Cedric Coward, who is at Eastern Washington and is transferring up to Washington State.
I love that.
I man, trying to keep it to myself for now. Cedric Coward. Next guy on the list, a guy you and I both like quite a bit, Brooks Barnheiser out of Northwestern.
Oh, Barnheiser Hive. Let's go.
Yeah, the rare guy who has spent his whole career at a high major that I will be covering during the series because I just like Brooks Barnheiser a lot.
Top 50 recruit on my big board as of right now.
Yeah. Now it's Sicko time. We've got our second high point player of the series.
Kamani Hamilton. Let's go. Yes,
so we've got Kamani Hamilton, who I got to interview. Very fun conversation with him. We've got Miles Rigsby out of Troy.
Okay.
Who is a player I'm fond of all these guys. But Miles Rigsby out of Troy. And the last one, we've got another up transfer from Division II to North Dakota State, Jackson Monee, who I had the chance to interview as well. So our next group, we've got Cedric Coward, Brooks Barnheiser, Jackson Monee, Kamani Hamilton, and Miles Rigsby.
I'm going to have to study up for the next pod.
Yeah.
I got to study up for the next pod.
So that's the group. So we will be back in probably 2 weeks. We'll do it again. But in the meantime, we're always around. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter/X, Stephen G Hoops and Bound Boards. Make sure you're plugged into No Ceilings. We're going to be doing a lot, especially on No Ceilings Plus this offseason. So make sure you're subscribed. That's where my Under Armour piece is going to be. I know Rowan's been working on a lot of stuff. Everybody's cooking stuff up behind the scenes. It's gonna be
another major announcement, I think, coming out next week.
I think so. I think we might be getting another new teammate soon.
Another personnel move, yeah.
So No Ceilings NBA on Twitter. Make sure you're following along. That's where the Rich Damon news dropped, that he's going to be joining the team. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Much love, y'all.